Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome to a special online event today called The Three Hidden Worlds of Shamanic Journeying. Discover foundational practices to access helping spirits and power animals for personal and collective healing. My name is Stephen Nine. I'm the founder and CEO of the Shift Network, and I'm delighted to be with you here, really learning from one of the foremost experts in the field of shamanism. She has been at the forefront of integrating wisdom from ancient cultures and into a modern sensibility for really 4 decades now. Her name is Sandra Ingerman, and she has been a teacher that we've had thousands of people go through her programs at Shift. She's trained hundreds or thousands of practitioners around the world. She has really been at the forefront of making sure that it's a safe and high integrity practice that really gives results for people. And today we're really going to go into some of the foundational understandings and practices for shamanic journeying, which is a core of the work. And so we're really thrilled to be learning these foundations in a new way today. So welcome and thank you for joining us, Sandra.
Thank you, Stephen. It's always a delight to be with you.
Well, we're super excited that you have come forward with a brand new program. We'll hear a little bit more about that towards the end of the hour today. But I know that this part of what you're excited about is to really teach some of these foundational understandings that maybe sometimes get glossed over or stepped over. And so without the teachings of today, it's harder to build a really deep, powerful practice of shamanism. So we're excited to build those foundations today and also have a chance to go deeper in your upcoming program. Would you like to create a little invocation or blessing for us to all enter together into sacred space?
Absolutely. The vehicle for shamans to create miraculous changes in people and on the planet has to do with ceremony. And that's the vehicle for the work. And so whether we do a prayer, an invocation, or actually go outside and perform a ceremony, we're actually moving into a big vehicle of positive change. So I'd like to invite everybody to close your eyes and take a deep breath, because in the world of shamanism, shamans don't see through their eyes, they see through their hearts. And so it's really important for us to find that place of peace inside of ourselves and to quiet our mind. And so I'd like to invite you to just imagine moving all the energy of your mind down into your heart. Think about how much you loved your loved ones and how much you love the nature beings that roam through all the elements, and hold that in your heart as you stay present to Stephen and I talking about the power of shamanism. Welcome, everybody.
Well, thank you. Well, so let's talk about, first of all, maybe your journey into shamanism. What is it that led you into this practice? Growing up, I think you grew up in New York and, it's sort of, traditional Western upbringing, and then you're a shamanic practitioner now. So what led you onto this path?
Well, I had a real traditional upbringing that most people in this culture can relate to growing up in Brooklyn. I grew up in a neighborhood that was all immigrants, and there wasn't the time or energy to be able to really devote to spiritual practices. So everything was about what we could do in the ordinary world to survive. And I got hit by lightning when I was 7 years old in my house in Brooklyn. But even before that, I had a really unusual relationship with nature. Everything seemed so alive to me. But then once I had my first near-death experience being hit by lightning, I went into another world that I don't remember, but I came back with a lot of clairaudient abilities. And so throughout my life, although I was an A student in school, everything for me was about talking to spirit. And then I had two more near-death experiences, initiations into shamanism that I didn't have an elder to initiate me, so the universe initiated me by giving me experiences where I left my body and I went back to source, and I learned about the power of unconditional love and the transcendent realms, and how we can open our invisible senses as multidimensional beings and step into different dimensions of reality filled with beauty. And so I had those experiences, but I had no practices. I had no elders to help me. And I grew up in the 60s, and I did the whole psychedelic movement, and that just burst my heart open to want to learn more. I wanted spiritual practices. And to make a long story short, because there's more, in 1980, without knowing it, the universe led me to take a workshop. I didn't even know what the workshop was on. I ended up taking this weekend workshop on shamanic journeying, which I'm so passionate about teaching. And I had the most amazing experience working with a helping spirit who came and answered all my questions in life. And then over the first 2 years, I suffered from suicidal depression from early teenage years. And my power animal, who I met, he taught me step by step how to create a life filled with joy and to leave my depression behind. And so through all the miracles I've seen of people working through depression and working through health issues with the assistance and the guidance of the helping spirits, it just really inspired me to not only get into shamanism for my own practice, but how I could share this with other people in the world, because the gifts that the spirits have for us are beyond our imagination.
Wow, well, that's quite a journey, and particularly being struck by lightning as part of your initiation onto the path. So let's talk a little bit about just the foundations of what is shamanism, since we want to really address people who are entering into this without a lot of background here today. And it's a fairly new concept in some ways to talk about a global sense of shamanism, since these were traditions rooted in many different cultures that shared a lot of similarities of practice. And then we've kind of like seen that from an anthropological and spiritual standpoint now and started to synthesize. But what do you really see as the foundations of ancient shamanic practice that we need to understand for today's modern world?
Well, first of all, shamanism is the oldest spiritual practice known to humankind. We know it dates back way over 100,000 years, and the date keeps going back even further as we keep finding archaeological evidence. And shamanism is a universal practice, so all of you listening right now most likely have ancestors who practice shamanism. And a shaman is a man or woman. The word shaman itself comes from the Tungus tribe in Siberia, and it means one who sees in the dark, one who knows, healer. There are different definitions, depend on the ethnographic literature that you look at. And shamans perform ceremonies. As I shared in the beginning, ceremony is the vehicle for change for a shaman. And one of the most common ceremonies that are performed in every culture around the world is what's called a shamanic journey, where the shaman goes into an altered state of consciousness, leaving his or her ego behind, lifting out of their humanness into their divine self, where they create this unbreakable, strong connection with divine beings in what we call transcendent realms, the lower world, the middle world, and the upper world. And there are different divine beings who they don't have a body. Some of them once had life here on Earth, and they understand what life on Earth is about. But shamans journey into a timeless reality outside of time, outside of the form that we experience, outside of the limitations that we experience in our body. And they meet up with a wealth of compassionate spirits. And shamanism is a nature-based practice. And so besides just working with divine beings in the three hidden worlds, shamans also work with all of life, everything that lives in their territory, in their landscape, as kin and as family. And so there's this wealth of beings and connections and guidance that we limit ourselves, we make ourselves so small. But when we enter into the world of the shaman, we open up to our unlimited divine self, and the spirits help us do that. And so shamanism has been around for tens of thousands of years. And one of the fascinating things for me, if I can just add this briefly, is I've taught shamanic journeying for close to 40 years now. And it's amazing to watch in every decade the different populations that come into shamanic work that are interested in the Western world. And so every decade I have to change my teachings a little bit because we keep coming in to different populations with different kinds of spiritual awarenesses. And so it's not a static practice. You can only imagine the issues that were dealt with tens of thousands of years ago are not the same that we're dealing with today. So the practice keeps evolving and changing so that it's very relevant to you and to your loved ones and to the planet itself.
Beautiful. What a beautiful overview. So let's dive into the subject that we said we would focus on today about the three hidden worlds of shamanic journeying. So this concept of three different worlds that you can access for different information, I think, is really central to at least most of the traditions we're aware of. So maybe give us a tour of those worlds and why you might access them.
Yeah, so that's the fascinating thing about shamanic work, because now we have all these stories from different cultures around the world, and we have people traveling to different cultures to work with shamans. And it's incredible to think about a practice that's tens of thousands of years old, but yet the worlds we talk about in shamanism, we talk about non-ordinary reality. Where we're living right now, we call ordinary reality, and we live in time, a planet of time, a planet of form. And in shamanic journeying, you're actually journeying outside of time. So you're going outside of the limits of time. And in every culture, when we tap into the multidimensional parts of ourselves, what we find is that there are three territories that are described from all shamanic cultures around the world. I don't know any culture that doesn't talk about these three hidden worlds. And so when we go into an altered state of consciousness and our soul gets to experience the unseen realms, we journey outside of time and space. What we find is there's this amazing territory called the lower world, It's also called the underworld in most cultures. And it's a world of forests and rivers and deserts and oceans and amazing beauty with, again, divine beings, animals and human teachers and different beings, angels and fairies who want to really help give guidance on how to live a good life on this planet and how to thrive, not just survive. And so the lower world is my favorite place to journey to. And then there's the middle world. The middle world is non-ordinary reality to here. So it's the timeless dimension we can step into. And what that means is that we can go into an altered state of consciousness, and we can talk to the land that we live on. We can talk to the trees. We can talk to the sun, to the moon. We can talk to the waters. We can ask for help in this world when there's environmental, climatic changes going on. So this world is the world of nature, and we get to experience the incredible beauty of nature when we step into the dimension outside of time in the middle, what we call the middle world. And then there's the upper world. And the upper world is a little bit more ethereal. That's how it's talked about in all shamanic cultures. There's still, you might come to a forest or an ocean or sand dunes somewhere. It is a territory that has forms, but it's almost like you're standing on something. It's like you're standing on something, but you're not exactly sure what it is. It's more ethereal, it's more formless, but it still has that nature component to it. And in that world, again, are animals, but mostly what people meet in the upper world is what we call teachers in human form, who might be ancestral spirits, who might be old gurus and mystics and healers and shamans and angelic beings and divine beings and the goddess, and the list goes on and on. And so what happens is when we start to step into the world of shamanism, we're first learning a skill for the very first time. And as we master the skill through practice, we start to notice that we get different kinds of information in the lower world than we get in the middle world, than we get in the upper world. So just for an example, when I do healing work for a client, I've learned over all my years of working that my helping spirit, what I call my power animal guardian spirit in the lower world, he likes to work on all my clients. So he's my healer. But in the upper world, I work with the Egyptian goddess Isis as my teacher. And she has great compassion for people. It's not that she doesn't want to engage in my healing sessions with me, but that's not her interest in working with me. Her interest in working with me is helping me write, helping me teach, helping me design my workshops. And so it's the reverse with a lot of my students. Some of my students, their healers are in the upper world, and their personal spirits are in the lower world. And so shamanism is a skill, and again, as you learn the mastery, you start to learn what kinds of information you get in the lower world, the middle world, and the upper world, and how the perspective of the animals, the animal spirits or the reptiles or the insects, they have a very different perception on what's happening in our life than a god or goddess or an ancestor has. And so you start to learn over time that all the spirits can give you a different perspective because they're teaching from their evolution of consciousness too. And so they have different perspectives to give to us. And so with practice over time, we start to learn which world we want to journey in for certain information or for doing ceremonies or for doing healing work. And there are different levels down in the lower world and different levels up in the upper world. So if you journey for the rest of your life, you will not get to all the territories in the non-ordinary realms.
Well, what a fascinating overview. Well, you kind of makes me think that is it valuable with some really big questions to do separate journeys to lower, middle, and upper world so you're getting different information on the same subject then?
I journey to every world, to every spirit when I have a big question. And the spirits have no ego, so they don't take offense. Like when my power animal gives me an answer and I go, yeah, but I want to get a second opinion. I'm going to go to another helping spirit that I work with. I'm going to go talk to my tiger, or I'm going to go talk to my tree outside of my house, or I'm going to go talk to Isis to get a second, third, fourth opinion. And the spirits don't care. As long as you take action, some action on what they share with you, they understand that we're discovering hidden territories in ourselves, our own inner landscape. And they understand that we need different perspectives and we need different kinds of guidance. And so, yes, in big questions, we want to journey to all three worlds, and we want to talk to different spirits to get different perspectives. It's not conflictual information. It's just different ways of looking at the same issue.
You know, it also strikes me as you talk about it that it's a bit different than, some of the more traditional spiritual teaching systems, which are a little bit more, you kind of like surrender your authority, if you will, to somebody else. And it's really you're staying in your own integrity and you're taking information, choosing whether to act on things. So it's not like you have to do what the different spirit says. It's really just you're still able to stand in your sovereignty, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah. You wouldn't believe the discussions I had with Isis back in the 1990s when she told me I needed to stop drinking coffee. And I said, oh, my God, no. And she said, okay. Shamanism is a practice of direct revelation, and that's what I love about it. I'm a rebel. I don't like anybody telling me what to do, a spirit, a person, an animal, nobody. I like my sovereignty. And so the spirits understand that we're on our own journey in life, and they try to guide us, and they try to help us to open up to a bigger part of ourselves. Again, we really limit our own power. We're taught to do that in our society, but the spirits try to open us up to the wealth of our inner landscape, but they never try to force a change. And they see everything in this world as a learning process. And so, yes, it took me years to realize that Isis was right, and it was time for me to stop drinking coffee. But she just waited until I got that understanding for myself. It was just, she was trying to help me out and saying, this would help your health and your nervous system. If I didn't listen to her, then she just watches and helps in whatever way that she can until I start to find my own ways of understanding.
I love that you can embrace being a rebel still as a shaman. So, well, I know we want to get to an experiential portion here, but just maybe set a little context for the purpose of different kinds of rattles, whistles, sticks, didgeridoo. There's a lot of sonic healing instruments that are part of shamanic practice. So maybe set a little context for that.
Yeah, so shamans talk about, in different cultures, non-ordinary reality has different terms. The Celtic people of Europe talked about the non-ordinary realms as the other world. In Australia, the native people call it the dream time. I like to call it the hidden worlds. There are different names in different cultures. And a shaman is a person who goes into those realms by going into an altered state of consciousness. And that means we have to change our brain waves from that thinking, what am I going to cook for dinner? I have 100 emails to answer. All of that are looping thoughts. We have to leave those thoughts behind. And so shamans have tools that help them do that and help them be the vehicle to take them into the lower and middle and upper worlds. And the vehicle that shamans use are drums. That's a very common instrument that's used all over the world. When we drum, the sound of the percussion actually shifts our brain waves from our mental egoic thinking down into the deepest part of our spirit that allows us to open to let our soul fly into the other worlds. And so in Siberia, the drum is actually called the horse that takes the shaman on his or her journey. And then in many cultures, rattles are used in the same way, where the shaman uses the rattles as a way to change their brain waves. And oftentimes they combine the rattling with chanting at the same time, which is a practice I love to teach and use it all the time. And in Australia, they have the didgeridoo that makes a wah, wah, wah sound that does the same change to our brain waves. In Australia, they also use what are called click sticks. Beautiful decorated piece of wood that you click together like two sticks, and that will put you into that altered state of consciousness. In some shamanic cultures, bells are used to put one into that altered state. So shamans use tools, and they also use plant spirits in many cultures to go into that altered space. So there's some vehicle that the shaman uses to quiet the mind, move from a mental state into a spiritual state, what we call a theta state in our brain waves that allows the shaman to travel into the unseen realms.
What a great explanation. Well, I think let's dive into an experiential practice. We wanted to do a guided journey so people really get a taste of how this works.
Yeah, so I thought I thought that what we can do today, because learning how to journey to the lower world and the upper world, you need more direction from me. But we all have the possibility of speaking to our favorite nature beings. And so in the middle world, we have the land that we live on. And to shamans, that was the most important spirit to connect with, was the land. Because if you're connected with the land as kin, as an ally, you can only imagine the land has your back. The land supports you in moving forward. And it's the same thing. There are ancestral spirits on the land. And if you talk to them and make friends with them, they will stand behind you and help you be successful in your life. There's earth, air, water, the sun, fire, the moon and the stars and the animals and the insects and the reptiles, and the list goes on and on. And so these are beings that we can talk to actually in the lower, the middle, and the upper worlds. But we're going to do a middle world journey because it's easy to do that. There's not much teaching for me to do. And so think about, who would you like to get to know? Would you like to get to know your land? Is there an animal or a bird or an insect? Like, do you love dragonflies? Would you like to meet a dragonfly and actually have a spirit-to-spirit connection with it? So I'm going to drum and lead you. And so close your eyes. Shamans see in the dark, and they see through their hearts. So again, move your energy into your heart. Think about all that you love about life. I know that we're all experiencing challenges right now, but there's also a lot to be grateful for. So remember what you're grateful for as we start this journey together. And think about, go into your heart. What does your heart say to you? Who calls to you in the middle world? Who would your heart like to meet? And what I'd like you to do now is to imagine yourself standing up in the room that you're in right now and walking towards the door of your house or your apartment. And you'll notice that your door turns into a mist or a veil or a curtain that you just have to step through. And all of a sudden, you're in a timeless reality with all the nature beings where you live and the land and the elements all around you. You're there fully, your whole body's with you. You can actually feel the texture of the land and smell the air and hear the sounds of nature and feel your heart beating in excitement for a new experience. Taste the air. We open up all our non-ordinary reality senses. And once you know who you would like to speak to, and again, it could even be an element, earth, air, water, fire. There's a lot going on climatically right now, and the elements have great wisdom for us. So first, as you meet whatever being you would like to connect with and build a relationship with, start with, may I step into your field of energy, so that you actually have permission to be entering into their field. And start by just opening up your heart. No words. We can do so much more without words in the spirit world. Open up your heart. Start to emanate love. You are actually a divine being filled with light. Emanate your inner sunlight, your inner starlight to this nature being that you would love to connect with. And let this nature being emanate love and light back to you. And feel what it feels like to establish such a deep, loving connection without words. And then introduce yourself to this being. And don't ask it for advice. Ask this being about their life. What has their experience been in all the years that they've been here? The animals on the land where you live, they're here a short time, but the earth and the sun and the waters of the world have been here for billions of years, and the air was the first living being. So they have a completely different perspective because their life here is a whole different time frame. Ask to learn about their life, to learn about their history. If you're talking to an animal or a reptile or a tree or a plant, ask about its family. And we only have a short time, but you can do this on your own by doing some drumming for yourself or putting on some nice shamanic music or some spiritual music. And always start by saying, may I step into your field of energy, emanate love and light, and then learn about this spirit, this nature being, and keep building a strong relationship with it so that you can come back over time and you start to feel the support that you have right where you live right now. Whether you live in the city or the country, it doesn't matter. Nature is everywhere. So for now, it's time to return. And as shamanism is a discipline, we don't crash land back into our home. We walk back the path that we took to meet this nature being. We retrace our steps all the way back into the room that we're journeying in now. And we come back feeling completely grounded because as we use the discipline of returning fully, we don't leave any of ourselves in the unseen realms because our destiny here is to experience fully being in a body and living on this great earth. So feel deep roots coming out of your feet, connecting you to the earth. And our work is done just for now. Welcome back, everybody. I know that this was a very short experience, but this is something that you can continue to do on your own. And what happens is you start to notice that you feel more beauty in life. You just experience more beauty rather than the suffering when you start to connect with the beings that you live with. You end up stepping into a dimension of beauty and of joy, not without challenges, but it's just a different perception and a different way of life. And it's time for us to step into a different way of how we live our life and how we connect with everything that's alive on this great planet Earth.
Well, one thing that was a beautiful journey, and one thing I was struck by was the asking of permission to enter into the energy field. It's sort of like we can move towards oneness, but we also have to respect boundaries as well. And so that there's a beautiful way that entrains us to respect the sovereignty of other beings, to enter in, be able to commune and connect and receive information. I was getting good information, particularly about the healing of our democracy from the bald eagle. Like I've been working a lot with that energetic with my book, and I've active in Marianne Williamson's campaign. And so there's a way in which all of these, it's like, oh yes, there's like getting guidance from the symbolic spirit of the country in the form of the bald eagle. is like, oh, I hadn't really thought about that. So it's really beautiful practice.
That's great. I love that. I love that you did that. That's great.
Yeah.
And you can see just by what you just shared, you can see the unlimitedness of what the spirits have to share with us.
Well, other question comes up. So the drumming, for people who are more, seasoned with this, the drumming is just kind of part of it. But talk a little bit about how the brainwave aspect of this and how the drumming and journeying actually affect our brainwaves.
Yeah, so as I was describing, whether you use a drum or rattle or bells or a didgeridoo or click sticks, it creates a type of percussion that actually affects our brain waves. And so when we're in an ego state of consciousness, our brain waves are what are called in an alpha, a beta state of consciousness. And as we slow down and move into meditative practices, our brain slows down into what we call an alpha state. And then as we continue to listen to the percussion, our brain slows down even more into what we call a theta state. And it's the theta state that allows us to go into those non-ordinary realms. And so again, it's the vehicle for shamanic practitioners and shamans to go into the unseen realms. Now, the drumming also has incredible healing potential. I've had clients and students who asked to have drumming while they were giving birth. And it was amazing how quickly the baby came out. I actually had a student who was in the hospital and asked the doctors to put on a didgeridoo tape. This was a cassette tape, so we're dating this story here. And boy, that baby just popped out immediately. There was no labor. It was incredible. And the drumming starts to create endorphins in your brain. So when you're so stressed out, I did a pilot research study with heart attack patients who had moved into a depressive state after their heart attack. And what I explained, because it was a group that was very embedded in Christian beliefs, what I explained to them was that the drumming would create endorphins that would calm down their nervous system, that would allow their heart to come back to a state of health. And boy, I never saw a group drum like this group drummed. And so just the drumming itself, shamans actually use the drum just only as a vehicle for healing. The drum beat can actually retrieve a person's soul that they've lost through trauma, can remove a spiritual blockage that's creating an illness. So the drum has its own healing abilities besides changing your brain waves to allow you to move into the unseen realms.
Fantastic. Well, I know there's one other subject we wanted to dive into some here today, which is about how ceremonies can also be enacted for planetary healing. We did a full program with you on this. There's some fascinating dimensions of how you can collectively focus intention, heal ecosystems. We'd talk specifically about climate change today too. So just to give a little bit of a taste of what can open up as we engage in collective healing ritual with shamanic practice.
Yeah, so I just want to be really clear that with shamanic practice, we actually can work with the climate in a very powerful way. But our egos can get involved in a very shadow way of trying to manipulate the environment. And that's not what I want to talk about here right now, because there's also an aspect of what's happening in our climate that is purely evolution. But when a shaman has land because they built a strong relationship, as I just talked about, with the spirits of the land and with the spirit of air and with the spirit of fire and with the spirit of water. And it becomes kin. It's family for you. Do you believe that we would be seeing the upsurge of the elements being so violent on the planet right now if they were our loving kin? So what are we missing? We're missing building a relationship with nature and with the elements that give us life. They want honor and respect, and they want gratitude, and they're trying to wake us up that we're not the only living beings on this planet, and we have to learn how to evolve and live a more shamanic way of life, of being more disciplined with our words and our thoughts and our daydreams and how we live our life. And so when we start to connect with the elements and with the nature beings as family, all of a sudden we start working together instead of there being such destruction on the planet right now. I hope that makes some sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, I want to spend some time now talking about your upcoming program, because I know you're excited to really create the foundations for a really powerful, effective healing practice for shamanic work. And so I know that you're kind of like doing this both for people who've never done shamanic work at all, as well as people who are more seasoned and have perhaps not really attuned to the basics as much as they otherwise could, or that they need to actually teach it to other people as well. So we're very excited by this program that Sandra has partnered with us on. It's called Shamanic Journeying, the foundational practices for accessing helping spirits, power animals, and personal and collective healing. It's going to be a 7-week program that is going to really take you into the core foundations and basics. There's not going to skip any steps, so you really have the foundations you need to develop a practice that is useful for your own guidance. It allows you to do the first steps of personal healing work, as well as begin to connect with and commune with other sources of intelligence and helping spirits and guides and power animals and gods and goddesses. That this really gives you the foundation to begin to do that. The URL for this is foundationsforsHamanicJourneying.com. You can go to foundationsforsHamanicJourneying.com, and it's laid out in a lot of detail there. And so, Sandra, I'd love for you to share an overview of what you're going to be teaching in the 7-week program and what folks can expect in terms of practices and modules.
Yeah, so I'm incredibly excited. I love teaching shamanic journeying. It saved my life, and so I like to share it with others for the same reason. And so, as I shared, I've been teaching this work for decades, and every decade I find that people need help approaching the work in different ways, because each different generation that comes into shamanic journeying needs a little help with understanding the spirit world. And so we're going to be spending time with me trying to really help you understand what a timeless reality means and what we have to do to approach our shamanic journeying work, not just come home from work and pick up a drum. But how do we prepare? What's the state we have to get into to have the deepest connection with the spiritual realms? And so once I give you that foundation, which is huge, once you learn how to do the preparation work, you actually understand all about shamanism. The spirits will be right there for you. And then I'll be taking you into the lower world first to learn about what helping spirits, what power animals, guardian spirits, angels, hidden folk want to come, and for you to be able to carry their power into the world. So they're helping spirits for you, and you embody their power too, which is an amazing feeling. And then we're going to move into middle world journeying and connecting with nature, as I talked about. And then we'll be learning how to journey to the upper world. And in the upper world, I'm actually going to have you journey to a teacher in human form who will perform a healing for you. And then we start to move into how do we start to take this work into our community? How, now that I know how to get an answer for myself and get healing for myself, how do I journey for a friend, a loved one, for a client, or others in my community? How do I get guidance for another person besides myself? And then our last session, which is such a powerful session, will be on how shamans work with illness. And I'll be teaching a very powerful healing method that I have seen. I can't tell you. We could do a whole entire hour or 2 hours on the miracles I've seen from this one healing practice. And it's what you'll be ready for, because for some of the more advanced practices, you need a more mastery, but you'll be ready by session 7, because you can't hurt anybody with this healing practice, but miracles can happen. And so the course is about learning how to discover more about your own inner landscape, your own gifts, your destiny, what you came here to do, but not just what you came here to do, what you have available to you, your unlimited potential, because society has tried to put you in a box. And so the spirits break you out of the box and help you discover the hidden parts of yourself that you haven't gotten to meet yet. And you'll be able to ask questions, you'll be able to get healings from your spirits, and then you'll learn how to help others with this work. It's a very, very full course. And this course will give you everything that you need to practice shamanism for the rest of your life. And shamanism is a lifelong practice. It's not something that you do for a short period of time. It's something that you do for life. And it's an exciting practice. And I just want to invite everybody in, because the dimensions of reality that we're going to be going to are beyond your wildest imagination, and will give you a completely different perspective on your own life and what's happening on the planet, as well as tools to help others and the planet itself.
Well, what a fantastic program. And I know that this, you really are teaching people skills that will last a lifetime, which goes way beyond inspiration in the moment to really something that can transform your life over time. So it's a powerful investment in your future, in your healing, in your spiritual awakening, and your service. One thing that I just want to presence, that I know that when we first talked to you about doing a program, you were a little skeptical of how much shamanic work you could do in an online environment. Maybe share a little bit about how powerful it can be to do shamanic practices as a collective in a live program like this.
Yeah, it's been amazing for me, because I was very nervous about teaching shamanism online for many reasons that we don't need to go into. But then when I stepped into the online work, I just couldn't believe it, because we just know what happens with the exponential power of a group coming together. So just for an example, I have students who try to journey on their own, and they can't for a while until they get enough practice. But when they journey in our class, they have the most amazing journeys, because you can only imagine when you have a collective field of hundreds to 1,000, and when we're doing planetary work of thousands of people, the exponential positive energy, when we add heart to life force, which is what shamanism is about. There's no miracle that we cannot attain. It's just, can we use our concentration and focus? And when we work as a community with people from around the world, it helps us to really move into a place of concentration and focus, adding heart to life force, and being able to do the work that shamans have done for tens of thousands of years, of traveling into the other dimensions of reality and bringing healing energies back into this time and into this dimension right now.
Fantastic. Well, again, you can find all the details laid out in a lot more detail at foundationsforsHamanicJourneying.com, foundationsforsHamanicJourneying.com. I'll share a little bit more about the program. So not only do you get 7 90-minute live sessions with Sandra, which includes interactive Q&A time and journeys and exercises, you also get recordings of every session, both video and audio, that you can add to your transformational library. We have word-for-word transcripts that you can work with and study and highlight going forward. There's small group time to connect with other participants. And also online, there's a community that really allows you to deepen your connections globally. Sandra's programs are often quite large. We've had over 1,000 people in several programs. And so there's a really powerful global shamanic community that gets activated. In addition, there's a number of great bonuses you can find at foundationsforsHamanicJourneying.com. There's a dialogue between Sandra and Karen Furr, and can you practice shamanism and keep to your Christian faith, building upon what she shared earlier. Shamanism is really it's not competitive with any other faith or practice. It's really complementary. You don't have to, there's no belief system to adhere to. It's really a set of practices that you can amplify whatever your tradition that you're coming out of. There's also a video presentation from Sandra on performing a virtual fire ceremony to release a pain, old wound, or trauma, or a limiting belief system. Again, maybe Sandra, share a little bit more about a fire ceremony and how powerful that can be to literally release things from your whole field.
Yeah, fire ceremonies have been used by shamans for since the beginning of fire. And fire is known for its transformative nature. That's its nature, is to transform. And in shamanism, everything is alive. So fire is alive and it's reading our heart. So when we come up to fire and we say, I have this old pain, I've been betrayed in my life, I have an illness that's been with me my whole entire life, I was abused as a child, I have a problem with alcohol, I'm really hurting right now about what's happening on the planet. And we keep repeating these ceremonies of releasing, then we have the ability to let go of the pain that we've been carrying. And that pain becomes a burden that doesn't allow us to move forward to create new opportunities for ourselves and for the planet. So it's really important for us to keep cleaning ourselves and clearing ourselves so that we're not dragging all this old energy with us that keeps us from tapping into our greatest potential. So I'm going to lead a fire ceremony in the unseen realms that you can repeat over and over and over again to keep releasing that which keeps you stuck to the past, so that you can create a positive present future for yourself and for the planet.
Fantastic. Well, that's just one of the bonuses in addition to the core teachings and practices of this course. So a lot of value here. There's also an 80-minute video from Sandra called Medicine for the Earth. a video dialogue with Sandra on nature, sacred tools, and carrying power. And there's a special bonus that's available only tonight, only if you register today up until midnight tonight. This is a collection of some of our top sessions from the Shamanism Global Summit, including Sandra, Daniel Four, Heather Ashamara, Robert Moss. Really great collection of different teachers here that you get when you sign up by midnight tonight. We like to do this as a way to encourage you to make a decision now while you have the most information before you get distracted by other things in life. And really, there's no risk and all kinds of benefit from moving forward, since there's a money-back guarantee of your satisfaction. So we've kept the investment in this program very accessible. It's just 3 payments of $109, or you can save about 10% when you pay in full. The course is going to start on February 4th, run at Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific time. Again, that's 5 Pacific time. Even if you can't make that live time, you can still get the full value by participating with the recordings and in the community and asking questions in that manner. Sandra is often very active within the Facebook community as well. And so there are ample times to really get your concerns and questions addressed personally, and so that you can really build this practice for a lifetime. So I encourage you to read through the testimonials and the whole page at foundationsforshamanic.com. There's amazing transformations that have happened in people's lives as a result of this work. Sandra is a very, very high integrity, very skilled and respected guide. She's really the go-to person out there for us and for so many others to really offer quality teachings, deep practices in a high integrity container to do this work. So Sandra, we're at the end of our time, minute or so left. Anything that's still on your heart you want to share with folks who are considering going into the foundations with you?
Well, yeah, there's just a couple of things. One is, I've already said this, but I'm going to take you into dimensions of reality of incredible beauty that will help you attain gifts that you can embody and translate into your life to improve the quality of your life and to improve the quality of all of life, because every change we make ripples throughout the entire web of life. And as Stephen said, I'm incredibly active on the Facebook page. And because I've been teaching for the Shift Network for many years now, I've gotten to see what are the big issues that are coming up teaching shamanism right now in the present time and with the present issues that are going on. So I designed the course based on my communications with everybody on Facebook, and I'll keep bringing in whatever teachings I need to in this course based on my conversations with all of you on Facebook. And so I love being on Facebook with the groups. They become family for me. I cry when the courses end, and I'm actually still on every Facebook group of my Shift Network courses. It's family for me. It's community. I just love it, and I invite you into the community.
Well, that spirit of family is something really special that you create, and it's amazing you do that with thousands of people. It's like, whoa, that's a big family. Hats off to you for doing it, and we're really grateful that you do, because you really do bring that kind of motherly sensibility about how to nurture people's inner life and inner practice so that they can really be of greatest service in this world. So it's really beautiful what you do. So again, everyone out there, if you want to go further with Sandra, this is a great new program, gives you the foundations. You just go to foundationsforsHamanicJourney.com and you get the top 5 global shamanism recordings when you sign up by midnight tonight. So Sandra, thank you for this hour together. Thank you for this upcoming program. And thank you for just how much heart and soul you pour into nurturing the field of shamanism and really ensuring that it's maturing and growing and honoring its roots and blossoming in new ways. It's really, you're really a model of service and dedication to people and to the planet.
Thank you, Stephen, for your kind words, and thank you for everything you and the Shift Network does, and blessings to you and blessings to everyone.